The arrogant millionaire is challenged by a friend to marry a fat woman for a day, but he breaks down in tears when he discovers something. The sun rises, painting the sky in golden hues as Minho Han, a 35-year-old arrogant millionaire, wakes up in his luxurious penthouse in Boston, USA. He stretches out his arms, feels the softness of the Egyptian silk sheets, and smiles smugly. Another day to accumulate more wealth and enjoy the pleasures that money can buy. Minho gets out of his king-sized bed and walks to the panoramic window. From there, he watches the city of Boston spread out below him. The gleaming skyscrapers reflect the morning sun, creating a display of glass and steel. Below, the streets begin to bustle with the hustle and bustle of workers, people Minho sees as nothing more than cogs in his money-making machine. As he enjoyed breakfast prepared by a private chef, Minho ran through his schedule for the day: important meetings, million-dollar deals, maybe lunch at a fancy restaurant, the life he had dreamed of and had achieved through hard work, and of course some less than scrupulous work-life intrigue. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Jisoo, his best friend since college and now a partner in several business ventures. "Hello, Minho. Ready for another day of making money?" Jisoo's excited voice rang out from the other end. Minho laughed. "Always like this, buddy." "What's new today, actually?" "Yes," Jisoo replied with amusement. "I have a challenge for you." The millionaire raised an eyebrow, looking curious. Challenges had become rare in his life lately, since he had gotten almost everything he wanted. A challenge. "You have my full attention now," Jisoo laughed. "Remember our conversation about how money can buy anything? I want to see if you can prove it." Minho leaned back in his chair, a smug smile on his lips. "Of course I can." "What do you have in mind?" "I want you to get married in a day," Jisoo replied. Minho frowned, confused. "Get married in a day? That's it?" "I could easily hire a model or an actress." No, Jisoo interrupted. "It wouldn't be a challenge if it was that easy. I want you to marry someone you wouldn't normally look at on the street." Minho shivered. "What do you mean, a fat woman?" Jisoo replied bluntly. "I want to see if you can survive a day of being married to someone who is completely out of your league." Minho almost choked at that. "Are you kidding?" "I'm serious," Jisoo replied. "If you can do it, I'll donate $1 million to a charity of your choice. If you can't, you're the one who has to donate." The millionaire paused for a few seconds, thinking. On one hand, the idea made him uncomfortable. On the other hand, he had never turned down a challenge, especially when it involved money. "Okay," Minho said finally, "I accept. But on one condition: you take care of everything from the bride to the paperwork. I don't want to interfere in this any more than necessary." Jisoo laughed loudly from the other end of the line. "All right, get ready, my friend. Tomorrow is going to be very different from your usual day." After hanging up, Minho shook his head. What was he getting himself into? But he quickly dismissed those thoughts. After all, it was just one day, and for charity, what bad things could happen? The next day was cloudy, as if the sky itself was hesitating about what was about to happen. Minho woke up earlier than usual, feeling a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Unease boiled in Minho's stomach as he prepared for this strange day. He carefully picked out a tailored Italian suit, because if he was going to go through this ordeal, he would at least look perfect. At exactly 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Minho took a deep breath before opening the door. Jisoo stood there with a wide smile on her face, and with her was a woman who made Minho's heart sink. She was just as Jisoo had described her: fat, at least 300 pounds, dressed in simple, unimpressive clothes. Her brown hair was tied hastily in a messy bun, and she looked as uncomfortable as Minho felt. "Minho, this is Lena," Jisoo introduced with a smile. "Your wife for a day." Lena looked at Minho shyly, her round cheeks turning a little pink. "Hello," she said softly. Minho tried to smile, holding out his hand. "Nice to meet you." Lena. Jisoo handed Minho a folder containing the necessary documents for a one-day marriage, a legal procedure he had arranged. "Everything is ready. You're officially husband and wife in 24 hours. Enjoy." With a wave and a wink, Jisoo left, leaving Minho and Lena standing alone in the hallway. An awkward silence stretched between the two. Minho finally said, "I think we should go inside." Lena nodded, following him into the apartment. Her eyes widened as she took in the opulence of the place. "Wow," she whispered. "It's beautiful." Minho just shrugged, not seeming too concerned. To him, these were just the basics. "Thanks," he said curtly. "So what do you want to do today?" Lena seemed surprised by the question. I don't know. I didn't think you'd ask me that." Minho sighed inwardly. This was going to be harder than he thought. "We got married in a day, right? We should do something." A small smile appeared on Lena's lips. "Actually, there's a place I've always wanted to visit. The Boston Museum of Fine Arts. Would you like to come with me? Minho hesitated. The museum wasn't his favorite place, but going there was better than staying in the apartment all day. Okay, why not? He replied. Lena's face lit up with a genuine smile, and in that moment, Minho realized that when she smiled, she had a certain charm. They left the apartment and took the elevator down to the lobby of the building. Minho noticed the curious and even contemptuous looks from the people around them as they looked at this unusual couple. He felt a little embarrassed, but surprisingly, there was also a hint of resentment at the looks Lena was getting. On the way to the museum, Minho expected the awkward silence to last, but to his surprise, Lena started talking about art. Her eyes lit up as she described her favorite paintings and the artists she admired. Minho found himself actually listening with genuine interest, impressed by her knowledge. When they arrived at the museum, Lena looked like a kid in a candy store. She led Minho through the galleries, explaining each piece with passion and flair. Minho was surprised to find that he was actually enjoying the tour. "You really know a lot about art," Minho commented, as they stopped in front of an Edward Hopper painting. Lena blushed slightly. "Thank you. I studied art history in college. It's always been my passion." Minho frowned. "Then why don't you pursue it?" Lena paused. "That's complicated. My family. They have different expectations for me." Before Minho could ask further, Lena quickly moved on to another work, pointing to another painting to change the subject. Minho let the question go, but he was still curious. There was something hidden in this story that Minho didn't know about. After visiting the museum, they had lunch at a nearby restaurant. Minho suggested a fancy restaurant, but Lena chose a simple one. Minho was hesitant at first, but he was eventually surprised by the taste of the rustic food. During lunch, they chatted more. Minho found out that Lena volunteered at an animal shelter and that she loved reading. She had a clever sense of humor, and her smile radiated joy. Gradually, Minho began to feel comfortable and even enjoy it. In the afternoon, at Lena's suggestion, they visited a nearby park. Walking among the trees, Minho was surprised to find himself feeling light and carefree, something that was rare in his busy business life. "You know," Lena said as she watched the children playing, "sometimes I think people forget to enjoy the simple things in life." Minho looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" She smiled, her eyes shining. "Look around us. The green of the trees, the laughter of children, the scent of grass. All of this is free, but how many people actually stop to enjoy it?" Minho fell silent, pondering her words. He couldn't deny that there was a deep truth to it. As the day wore on, Minho found himself growing more curious about Lena. She had a depth he hadn't expected, with intelligence and sensitivity that far exceeded her outward appearance. As the sky began to darken, they returned to Minho's apartment. He was surprised to find that he didn't want the day to end, so he said, somewhat sheepishly, "I guess our one-day marriage is coming to an end." Lena smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Yeah, I guess so. This is a very special day, Minho." "Thank you." Impulsively, Minho took her hand. "Lena, I wanted to see you again. Not because of a challenge or anything like that, but because I really enjoy spending time with you." Lena's eyes widened in surprise, but a bright smile quickly appeared on her face. "Me too, Minho." In that moment, something changed between them, a quiet understanding, a connection that transcended appearances or social conventions. Before Lena could leave, Minho suddenly made an invitation. "Do you want to?" He hesitated for a moment, but the light in her eyes showed her curiosity. "Are you sure?" "I mean, we just met today." Minho smiled, a genuine smile that surprised even himself. "I'm sure. Besides, technically, we're still getting married in a few hours." "Right," with a small smile, Lena agreed. They left the luxurious apartment and got into Minho's Italian sports car, causing Lena to widen her eyes in surprise. On the way, Minho explained a little about his family. "My parents live in a villa on the outskirts of the city. They're, well, quite traditional and quite conservative." Lena nodded, looking a little nervous. "Do you think they'll accept me?" Minho hesitated for a moment. "Honestly, I don't know, but that's not important. What's important is that I want you to meet them." Upon arriving at the Han family's villa, Minho and Lena were greeted by a middle-aged housekeeper. She couldn't hide her surprise when she saw the woman accompanying Minho. "Your parents are in the living room, Mr. Minho," the housekeeper announced, glancing furtively at Lena. As they entered the lavishly decorated room, Minho's parents, Carlos and Helena Han, stood up, clearly shocked to see their son with a woman whose appearance was far beyond the norm. "Minho!" Helena exclaimed, her voice filled with shock. A mixture of surprise and displeasure was evident on Helena's face. "We didn't know you were coming." And with guest Carlos, a man with a stern expression, just looked at Lena with an unreadable expression. Minho, sensing the tension in the air, decided to speak first. "Mom, Dad, this is Lena. We just met today. and I wanted to introduce her to everyone." Lena, clearly feeling uncomfortable, forced a smile and held out her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Han." Helena shook Lena's hand perfunctorily, while Carlos just nodded without saying anything. "So, Lena," Helena began in a falsely sweet voice, "what do you do for a living?" Before Lena could answer, Minho quickly interjected. "Lena has a degree in art history and is currently volunteering at an animal shelter. She has an amazing knowledge of art. Did you know that?" Minho's parents looked at each other, clearly surprised by the answer, which was not what they expected. The conversation that followed was tense, filled with awkward silences. Helena asked almost tactless questions while Carlos sat silently, watching Lena with calculating eyes. As the night wore on, Minho grew increasingly uncomfortable with the way his parents treated Lena. He had never questioned his family's values before, but now, seeing the undisguised contempt in their eyes, something inside him rose up against it. When Helena made a cruel remark about Lena's weight, Minho couldn't hold it in any longer. "Enough," he shouted, startling everyone in the room. "I'm not going to sit here and listen to you treat Lena this way. She's a wonderful, smart, kind person. The fact that you can't see that says more about you than it does about her." The room fell silent. Lena looked at Minho with a mixture of surprise and gratitude, while his parents looked as if they had been struck by lightning. "Let's go," Lena, Minho said, taking her hand. "I'm sorry about this. I really thought they'd be better than this." As they were about to leave the room, Carlos' voice stopped them. "Wait, son." Minho turned around, still angry but ready to listen. Carlos slowly stood up, his face a mixture of conflicting emotions. "Dad, I'm sorry for the way we behaved. We were raised a certain way, but that's no excuse to treat someone like this." Helena, still shocked by her son's outburst, also spoke up. "Yes, we behaved very badly. Lena, please forgive us." Lena, with an amazing composure, smiled gently. "It's okay. I understand that first impressions aren't always the best. Maybe we can start over." The tension in the room gradually dissipated. Minho, still holding Lena's hand, felt a surge of pride and admiration for her. How could someone be so generous and understanding after being treated so badly? The four of them sat down again, and this time the conversation became more natural. Lena talked about her passion for art, and even the usually reserved Carlos was amused to discover that they shared an interest in Renaissance painters. When they left the villa at the end of the night, Minho felt emotionally drained but strangely relieved. "You were amazing there," he told Lena as they drove back to the city. "I'm not sure I could have been as forgiving as you were under those circumstances." Lena smiled, her eyes sparkling in the light from the car's dashboard. "Sometimes the best way to change people is to show them a kindness they didn't expect." Minho was silent for a moment, thinking about her words. "You know," he said finally, "I think I learned more about life and values in just one day with you than I did in all my years." Minho said. Lena blushed, but her smile blossomed. "Then maybe we can continue to learn together," she replied softly. In that moment, Minho knew that his life had changed forever. The one-day challenge had turned into something much bigger, something he couldn't quite fathom. Over the next few days, Minho and Lena continued to see each other. The arrogant millionaire, who had once looked down on others based on their appearances, now longed to spend every spare moment with a woman who had broken all his old prejudices. As their relationship deepened, Minho began to notice strange things. Whenever he mentioned meeting Lena's family, she would try to avoid it. Occasionally, he would catch her looking off into the distance with a sad expression, as if she was carrying a heavy burden. One day, while they were walking in the park, Minho decided to ask her directly. "Lena," he began, a little hesitantly, "is there something you're not telling me about your family?" Lena stopped, her face pale. "Why are you asking?" she asked, her voice trembling. Minho sighed. "You always avoid talking about them, and sometimes, when you think I'm not looking, you look sad." Lena was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on a distant point. Finally, she spoke, her voice a whisper. "There's so much you don't know about me, Minho, about my family. And I'm afraid that when you know everything will change." Minho's heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" "I can tell you anything." Lena looked into his eyes, hers glistening with tears. "Do you promise to listen to the whole story without judging me?" Minho nodded, squeezing her hand. "I promise." Lena took a deep breath and began to tell her story, a story that Minho had never imagined. "My real name," she said, "is Lena Mendonca dos Santos. My family, let's just say they're not what you think." Minho frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "My family owns one of the biggest conglomerates in the country," Lena revealed, her voice shaking slightly. "The Dos Santos fortune is actually much bigger than yours." Minho felt the ground disappear from under his feet. "But why? Why did you never tell me about it?" Lena smiled sadly. "Because that's not who I really am or at least not who I chose to be. She went on to say that since she was a child, she had rejected her family's lavish lifestyle. She wanted to live a normal life, doing meaningful things in the world without the burden of the Dos Santos name. My parents, she explained, have agreed to let me live my own life, away from the limelight. They understand my desire to be judged by who I am, not by the amount of money in my bank account. Minho was stunned. Everything he thought he knew about Lena was turned upside down. What about your looks, he asked, still trying to process everything. How Lena smiled sheepishly. It's partly genetic, partly choice. You know, when I was a millionaire heiress, people often approached me for personal gain. My looks actually act as a very effective filter. Minho was silent for a long moment, absorbing everything he had just heard. Finally, he spoke. So this whole time you knew who I was, about my fortune? Lena nodded. Yes, I know. But that doesn't matter to me, Minho. What matters to you, what matters is who you are inside, Lena said. Over the past few days, I've seen you change, become a kinder, more open person. Minho felt a wave of emotion surge through him. Shame for his initial prejudices, admiration for Lena's strength, and the gradual realization that he was falling in love with her. Lena, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. I don't know what to say, other than I'm so glad I got to meet you, the real you, she smiled, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. Me too, Minho. I'm so glad. In that moment, under the blue sky of the park, Minho and Lena kissed for the first time. That kiss marked not only the beginning of a budding love, but also a profound transformation in both of them. Over the following months, Minho and Lena's relationship grew deeper. The millionaire who was once obsessed with status and appearance now begins to rethink all of his values. With Lena's gentle guidance, Minho begins to use his wealth in ways he never thought possible before. He starts scholarship programs for disadvantaged students, invests in social housing projects, and becomes a strong advocate for environmental issues. As for Lena, she finally finds the courage to pursue her passion. With Minho's support, she opens an art gallery, focusing on showcasing unknown artists and those from marginalized communities. The couple is no longer known for their wealth, but also for their charity work and for challenging the prejudices of high society. They regularly appear at charity events, Minho proudly holding Lena's hand, ignoring the stares and gossip of those who cannot see beyond their appearance. Minho's family, initially hesitant, eventually accepted Lena completely. Minho's mother, Helena, in particular, developed a close relationship with her daughter-in-law, often asking Lena for advice on how to become a better person. A year after their first meeting, Minho proposed to Lena. The wedding took place in an intimate atmosphere, with only family and close friends present. Lena wore a simple but elegant dress, and Minho couldn't take his eyes off her, ecstatic at the inner beauty that he now saw clearly in her every smile and every gesture. But it was during their honeymoon that the first dark cloud appeared in their happy sky. Lena began to feel tired frequently and had aches and pains all over her body. At first, they thought it was just the stress of the wedding and the trip. But when the symptoms persisted after returning, they decided to see a doctor. After a series of tests, the horrifying diagnosis was made. Lena had a rare and very malignant disease. The prognosis was not good. The doctor said she had only a few years left to live. Minho was devastated when he heard the news. He could not accept the cruel fate that threatened to take Lena from his life so soon. With all his wealth and influence, he threw himself into the search for a cure. The following months were a whirlwind of emotions. Minho did his research, met with the world's leading experts, and funded promising research. As for Lena, she faced her illness with a courage and serenity that amazed everyone around her. Despite the battle against time, the couple tried to enjoy every moment together. They traveled to places Lena had always dreamed of, created precious memories, and continued their charity work with more passion than ever. But as Lena's health deteriorated, Minho became increasingly desperate. He spent a fortune funding scientists, begging doctors. Minho even looked into controversial alternative treatments, but nothing could stop the relentless progression of the disease. One autumn afternoon, as they watched the sunset from their balcony, Lena finally confronted Minho about his obsession with trying to save her. "Darling," she said softly, taking his hand, "you need to accept that there are things beyond our control." Minho felt hot tears rolling down his cheeks. "I can't give up, Lena. I can't lose you," she smiled, the smile that always warmed his heart. "I will never lose you, Minho. What we have, the love we shared, that is eternal, greater than life and death." That night, as Lena slept, Minho reflected on all they had been through together. He thought about the absurd ordeal that had brought him to her, the transformation she had brought him, and the deep, sincere love they had built. Over the next few days, Minho slowly accepted the inevitable. Instead of spending all his energy on futile searches for cures, he focused on making Lena's final days as happy as possible. They spent hours talking, recalling happy memories, planning a future, not one they would spend together, but one Minho would build, based on the values and dreams Lena had taught him to cherish. A week before their second wedding anniversary, Lena called Minho back for a serious talk. She was clearly much weaker, but her eyes were as bright as ever. "Minho," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." Minho's heart pounded, fearing bad news about her health. "What is it, honey?" Lena took a deep breath before continuing. "Remember when I told you about my family and our wealth?" Minho nodded, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "Actually, there's something I haven't told you, something even my family doesn't know." She hesitated, trying to gather her courage. "When I decided to leave the world of the wealthy, I didn't just leave. I created a secret fund." Minho frowned, not entirely understanding. "Secret fund?" Lena nodded. "Over the years, I've transferred a significant portion of my family's assets into this fund. Billions, in fact, all kept secret, out of sight." Minho was taken aback. "But why?" "Because I want to make a difference," Lena explained, her eyes shining with determination. "Not just small donations, but something truly revolutionary. And now, Minho, I want you to be the guardian of that fund." Minho was speechless, trying to make sense of what he had just heard. I don't understand. "Why are you telling me this now?" Lena squeezed his hand. "Because I know my time is short, my love, and I want to make sure that the money is used for good, to continue the work we started together." She explained that the fund had been set up so that Minho could use it for large-scale charitable projects without drawing attention to the source of the money. "You've become a different person, Minho," she said, smiling. "A man who understands the value of helping others and making a difference in the world. I trust you to use this money wisely." Minho felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. It was a huge trust that Lena had placed in him. The following days, Lena shared with Minho every detail of the secret fund, as well as her ideas and dreams for future projects, from building schools in disadvantaged areas to funding cutting-edge medical research. As Lena's health rapidly declined, Minho remained by her side. They spent hours talking, laughing over happy memories, and planning for a future that Lena would never see, but that she had helped shape. On the eve of their second wedding anniversary, Lena asked to be taken out onto the balcony. She wanted to see the stars one last time. Minho gently carried her outside, wrapping her in warm blankets. As they gazed at the night sky, Lena said softly, "You know, Minho, when we met, I thought I was teaching you about life. But the truth is, I learned as much from you as you learned from me." Minho kissed her forehead gently, whispering, "You taught me to be a better person, Lena. You changed my life in ways I never imagined." Lena smiled, her eyes reflecting the stars in the sky. "Promise me one thing, my love. Promise me that you will continue to grow, learn, and make a difference. Don't let my passing stop you from living your life to the fullest." With tears streaming down his face, Minho promised. They sat there, holding each other tightly under the stars, until Lena fell asleep peacefully in his arms. The next morning, on their wedding anniversary, Minho woke up to find Lena had passed away during the night. She had passed away quietly, with a peaceful smile on her face. The days that followed were a whirlwind of pain and grief for Minho. The funeral was a celebration of Lena's life, with hundreds of people she had touched coming to pay their respects. Weeks later, as the pain of his grief gave way to a lingering longing, Minho faced the task of fulfilling his promise to Lena. He threw himself into charity work, using the secret funds Lena left behind to launch major projects. Schools were built in poor communities, equipped with modern technology. Microcredit programs helped small entrepreneurs realize their dreams. Minho became one of the country's biggest philanthropists, though few knew the true extent of his work or the source of his donations. He kept his promise to Lena to keep things private, allowing good deeds to be done without drawing attention to himself. As the years passed, Lena's positive influence continued to radiate through Minho's actions. He never remarried, dedicating his life to honoring the legacy of his greatest love. On his 60th birthday, Minho decided it was time to tell the whole story. He gathered his trusted journalists and told them everything, from the initial challenge, his encounter with Lena, the change she brought to him, to the secret fund that has been changing lives for decades. The story captured the hearts of the public, not just as a love story, but also as a story of redemption, personal growth, and the transformative power of generosity. Minho used this newfound attention to inspire others, encouraging them to make a difference, even if it was just a small contribution. He often said, "Lena taught me that true wealth is not in what you own, but in the positive impact you make in the lives of others as old age approached. Minho began to prepare the next generation to continue the work Lena had started. He established a foundation in her name, ensuring that Lena's legacy of love and kindness would continue forever. In his final days, Minho often looked up at the starry sky, remembering his last night with Lena. He felt he had fulfilled his promise, had lived a life that Lena would be proud of. On the night of his 65th birthday, Minho fell asleep with a smile on his face, his heart at peace. In his dream, he saw Lena, young and radiant, just like the day they met. In that dream, she reached out to him, her eyes sparkling with love and pride. Minho Han died peacefully in his sleep that night. The news of his passing was met with deep sadness across the country, but also with deep gratitude for the impact he and Lena had left on countless lives. His funeral was a celebration of a life well lived, a life transformed by the power of love and kindness. People mourned not only the loss of a great philanthropist, but also the end of a love story that inspired millions. Minho and Lena's legacy lives on through the charity they founded, the lives they changed, and the inspiration their story continues to bring. And so what began as a test of pride ended as a powerful lesson in love, acceptance, and the true meaning of wealth. Minho and Lena's story has become legendary, reminding people that love has the power not only to change individuals but also to transform the world.